For many years, Michigan International Speedway has been known for speed, and more speed. With some of the fastest speeds in all of NASCAR, drivers have seen times and speeds as high as 120 miles, 220 miles an hour. Drivers today are expecting to go more than 180 up to 190 miles an hour today at this 2-mile circuit as we get ready for the pre-ultimate race of the PRL Cup Series season, live at the virtual Michigan International Speedway in Brooklyn, Michigan. Good evening and welcome to the Global SimRacing Channel's coverage for Round 9 of PRL Cup Series action presented by Millionautos. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside me in the booth tonight is the driver of the JTG Daughtery Racing number 37 Chevrolet Camaro in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, Christian Schellner. We'll also be joined by Bill Soupson in the pits this evening for tonight's action. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. With the speed expected today and the finesse needed to harness that speed, let's take a look at your GSRC lap guide for the best way around this racetrack.
Welcome to the Michigan International Speedway. This 2-mile D-shaped oval located in the beautiful Irish hills of southern Michigan, sitting about an hour and a half's drive to the southwest of Detroit along I-94, right in the backyard of Chevrolet and Ford. When you're that close to Detroit Power, your speedway better live up to the hype. 18-degree banked corners with a 12-degree banked front stretch allow for maximum power and lots of action. The higher downforce Indy cars were able to put on spectacular shows of driver bravery and talent. In recent years, it's played host to mostly the tin top cars, as the NASCAR Cup, Xfinity, Gander Truck, and even ARCA Series have all hosted events here in the last decade. Michigan is a wide, sweeping oval, but it isn't harmless. The lowest groove of the corners near the bottom can be your very best friend in the IndyCar, but your worst enemy in the tin tops. Cars will frequently get loose that far down the track, causing chaos for the pack behind. Michigan is all about speed and lots of it. Often the drivers that find the most success here are the ones willing to experiment around the track and find grip their competitors haven't. The facility in recent years has doubled down on fan comfort as well, giving more elbow room, redoing seats, camping areas, even providing Wi-Fi to watch all of these live broadcasts in the grandstands of all the sections. All in all, Michigan has become a staple of American motorsports since it opened in 1968. Fans and drivers both always look forward to when the schedules come back to the beautiful Irish hills of southern Michigan. Fast speeds, high action, it's all here at Michigan International Speedway, where it's your speed.
That was a look at your GSRC lap guide for Michigan International Speedway. Now, as these drivers practice how they will race tonight, let's bring in my co-announcer for tonight, Christian Schellner. You raced here just a couple weeks ago for the Coke Series, had a strong chance of winning. What will these drivers expect tonight for this track?
Well, this track's always been one of the absolute fastest tracks back on the old low downforce, high-powered car. It was actually one of the absolute fastest, especially at turn 1 speeds. And it still kind of is today with this new high downforce car. The only difference really is that it's very much pack racing. Obviously 18 degrees of banking in the turns, 2 miles. It's a very straight line speed dependent track, and that's kind of where you see a lot of the a lot of the battles come in. It's all about getting a good run off of especially 2, trying to get to the inside of 3, and then if the top car can defend. And it's actually a very good racing track, even with this newer package, and one of my favorites.
Yeah, it can be very fun and enjoyable, absolutely, here at Michigan, as long as you are patient and don't cook your tires today. But today's round is sponsored by Millionautos. They're your source for high-end automotive parts, focusing on providing the best products available in the industry with unparalleled customer service. Visit Millionautos.com. The series title sponsor is WEBB Hearing Centers. Family-owned and operated business since 1972. Top quality hearing aids and service in Arizona. Visit them at WebbHearingCenters.com. This series is also sponsored by Road Trip Transport. Whether a tractor or truck or anything in between, we can move it. Specializing in all kinds of flatbed freight, call Road Trip Transport at 251-525-7429. This series is also sponsored by ButtKicker. ButtKicker products include incredible immersion and bring realism to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. For more information and feel what you've been missing, go to thebuttkicker.com. Let's take a look at what you may have missed so far in the championship standings. The second to last round of the campaign. Last race was a non-broadcasted event at Darlington, which was shortened to 77 of a scheduled 105 laps after a 7-caution event. Several of the drivers you see here were forced to use drop weeks, like Danny Cervantes, Bradley Hawley, Robert Bisson Jr., Joshua Daniels amongst them. And oh, by the way, James O'Brien took the DNS in that race. With that being said, without drops, Richard Reagan Jr. in a solid position entering tonight with 6 victories and a 36-point lead advantage over Hawley. O'Brien is in third with the DNS on the calendar at 37 points, while Daniels and Acosta round out the top 5, separated by 53 points. Keep in mind, Acosta and O'Brien have used the DNS this season and are factored into those points. The team standings, though, have been dominated by one organization, AthleteBooker.com eSports. We've talked about them all season. 698 total points, 7 combined wins, 16 combined top 5s, 21 combined top 10s, and 4 poles from their drivers, with quarterback Joey Rolls Racing one of the only other event in that listing, with 6 top 5s, 9 top 10s, and 2 poles, 113 points back. The drivers behind them, Carl Rambrod, SGE Esports, and Adams Family Racing, moved their way inside the top 5 after the last race, overriding Shotgun Rangers after the Rangers ended up having an up and down past couple of weeks in the improvement from some of the Adams Family Racing machines. Now, Christian, let's take a look towards your race details for tonight as we get ready to race for 130 plus miles.
It's around 9 of 10 tonight, 65 laps, and the laps count is actually going to be pretty interesting tonight because fuel mileage can be stretched to about 50 laps. So this is absolutely a one-stop race, and if we get an early caution, that's really going to define what people's strategy is. As always, fixed setup in this league. No fast repair, and that's going to be a factor because damage at this track is a huge deal. It's obviously very, very aero dependent and very, very straight line speed dependent, so you don't want to pick up any damage. We do see drivers getting into the wall, getting tight on the exit of turn 2 and 4, so that's something that they're really going to have to keep an eye on. And a 24 incident limit, which I don't think we're going to see anybody get up to tonight.
It's going to be interesting to see how these drivers race tonight here at Michigan, but before we get towards the conditions for these drivers tonight, to ask you, are you interested in advertising with GSRC? Our channel's 1 million monthly global impressions are a great way to get your branding seen by a diverse audience. Follow the link in the description to the YouTube version of this broadcast to learn more about the Global SimRacing Channel. The track conditions for today's action looking fairly hot today. 79 degrees is the air temp, 118 degrees is the track temp in Fahrenheit. No wind as a factor, humidity 53%, so somewhat slick on that racetrack. A couple drivers have been getting a bit loose in practice, Christian.
Yeah, and it's one of those tracks where it's deceptively difficult. It starts out very, very easily flat out, and in open setup we were kind of getting all the way out to about lap 10 completely flat out, and then after that it's really a game of managing the expectations in the middle of the corner, because it's actually advantageous to lift a little bit early so that you can come off the corner completely flat out. And obviously with everybody being in a draft pack, there's really no way of escaping the draft pack. You would need something major to happen to allow you to get out to a big lead. So there is definitely a factor of tire management and sort of not trying to blow through the field, especially if you're starting further back. So it's going to be really interesting to see how drivers deal with this, because if you really start to lean on that right front, it's really, really going to hurt you after about 15 to 20 laps.
And a couple drivers had talked to, including Jimmy Mullis for a fixed series event this past week or so, mentioned here at Michigan as well. There's not as much of the stuck feeling that was compared for the Coke series, where drivers had talked about on the radio they felt like they were stuck, had trouble getting track position. But with the fixed set, if you drive it right, you can gain that set track position if you tire manage right and drive it right, Christian.
Yeah, the fixed set seems like it's a little bit more draggy down the straights, so it seems like you can actually do a little bit more as a driver to get some big runs. Obviously, open setup was a little bit, as you say, kind of stuck together, so I do think it'll actually make for a bit of a better race tonight. So that's good for us, and that's good for the guys in the series. But it's still all going to come down to managing tires, and especially if you're the leader, trying to not burn your own tires up, trying to keep guys behind you, because you can't escape. So there's no advantage to really pushing. It's better to just kind of ride, try and save, and just kind of run your own race. Even though it's difficult, it's kind of like a Daytona Talladega effect around here now.
Heard a lot of those comparisons throughout the week from many different drivers, but we're about to see how that comes to fruition. Qualifying about to get underway. Best times in practice: Colton Lane 38 flat, Bradley Holly in second, Kalen, Rod Hollyfield, Pat Harvey round out the top 5, separate by 2/10. A couple notes to mention though, in terms of penalties after what was a precautions race at the place they call Too Tough to Tame. After 2 caution points in 3 races, Colton Lane will not be allowed to qualify and must start from the rear of the field today. Alec Lumpkin will also serve a 1-race suspension here at Michigan, while a 1-race suspension was served to James Dewar for a post-race altercation at that said racetrack as well. So 3 different penalties entering today, as Brandon Adams is the first car on the racetrack. Talk us through a lap here, Christian, as these drivers try and get up to speed.
So really, this is very similar now to a plate track style of qualifying. As you see here, he's trying to run the top through 3 and 4 to just really build up speed for the lap. It's a trick that we've kind of done for a couple of years now, and you'll see him duck all the way down to the bottom. He might use the apron, he might not. Some drivers like to use it at the start of the lap, others really just focus on it to the run to the line. So down into turn 1, it's actually quite challenging, because this is all about how aggressive you want to be with the turn in. You don't want to use that bottom lane. You want to be close to that seam though, and you see it's a little bit wide here, and not using all the room up to the wall there. But that's a really important turn, and it's deceptively so with it being flat out, because it's all about confidence on turn. It's a similar deal in turn 3, but it's a little bit easier. Not really sure why. I think it's because it opens out an exit. You'll see him hold down to the bottom. Looks like he's going to maybe go for a second attempt here as he cuts down to the apron. And it's really bumpy right down by the flag stand, so it's pretty unsettling. You don't really want to do it too much in the race. So he probably will go for the second lap. Daniel Knight actually takes the point with a 38.9.
Joshua Daniels, meanwhile, he's starting to take his first lap, is looking for a bit of a recovery. He and several others last week, Christian, at Darlington, were in a position to try and win the race. Then a big one happened. Colton Lane made contact with the driver trying to make a pass. That said driver then slid up the racetrack, and 5+ cars were involved who had just, mind you, came down in pit, including Holly, including several other contenders. That has really shooken up the point standings, and is why several drivers were forced to use drop weeks that they may have not wanted to have to use after that race.
Yeah, we've seen that before with Darlington in the past in other series. Is that it's one of those tracks where it's either completely green or there's a lot of yellows, and generally if something happens at that racetrack, there's not really a lot of options to you. Obviously, the bottom of the track is very, very wide, and if you can get down there, you can usually avoid what's happening at the top. But if the wreck's happening mid-corner in front of you, there's just nowhere for you to go, unfortunately.
Lots of space here today, though. That's the bright side. The thing is, though, you don't want to get damaged here, because this is a very, very aero-sensitive racetrack with the speeds you have to carry, it seems, Christian.
Yeah, there's no way that you're going to win the race if you have any damage of any kind. Even if it's just a slight crinkle in the right side of the car, it's going to slow you down an appreciable amount. So that's something that we're going to really have to watch for, especially when guys are tight in the pack at the beginning of the run. It usually comes down to people getting tight off of turn 2 and 4 and ending up in that outside wall. And the other thing is that if it's in a pack when that happens and it's one of the lead cars, that car tends to get fired down the racetrack and really cleans out the entire bottom line that's behind it. So it's one of those tracks where you never see. It's very much a plate track racing ethos now, and you do get plate track racing style wrecks that go with it.
By the way, at the top of the pylon, you see in the upper corner of your screen, Joshua Daniels, 38.738. Bradley Holly, he's looking to try and put in a fast time. And Holly only to the mid-pack, 38.85, while your points leader, Richard Regan, in your defending race winner from Darlington in P6. Paul Johnson carrying a lot of momentum from Darlington, by the way. He led several laps in that race. He's not going to have an easy one today. 16th on the starting grid is Pat Harvey, one of the final drivers who will take a time. He'll only have enough time for one total lap on the racetrack.
We see right now Joshua Daniels has got a really sizable advantage with his 38.73. And that's wild, really, when you consider the next time behind him is Abner Acosta with a 38.8 flat almost. And then everybody's packed into the 38.8s all the way back to the 18th.
Charles Sumner backs out. He's top 5 on the board. Only one other driver within range to put in another time. That's Pat Harvey. This will have to be a quick one. His only possible time, this time by, it's a 39.196. And because he runs out of time, guess what? He starts at the end of the timing pylon in terms of qualifiers. Tonight, 29 drivers have brought their cars to Michigan. Let's take a look at which drivers will start where for tonight's action for the penultimate race of the PRL Cup Series season. Joshua Daniels wins the pole tonight, another one for AthleteBooker.com eSports. Well, Abner Acosta, the highest independent in the starting order with a 38.801. Row 2 is James O'Brien, Danny Cervantes. Well, Brett Adams with a strong qualifying run, but his best of the season, a 38.823. Charles Sumner rounds out row 3. By the points leader, Richard Regan Jr. looking to clinch said points title today with a solid finish today. Robert Bisson Jr. showed a lot of speed at Darlington, but was involved in some incidents and blew a motor. He'll start in 8th, while Medina and Durbin round out your top 10, Christian.
Now, Adam Zemke's always kind of hanging around in the top 10, and this week he just misses out. He's in 11th right here. Ron Holyfield is lining up alongside him at 12th. Then we got Bradley Holly all the way back in 13th, so he's going to have some work to do from there. Derek Schilling is alongside him in 14th. Mike Knight in 15th, with Adam Shane in 16th. Then we got Blaine Adams in 17th. Paul Johnson, obviously last week, led some laps, and he's got some work to do if he wants to do that again this week. Then the next row back, we've got Mark Kalin and Daniel Knight in 19th and 20th.
Brandon T. Adams, one of the first qualifiers, 21st. Christopher Williams back in 22nd. He'll have a spotter for this evening's action. Also had a rough race at Darlington. So did Jeffrey Smith, who was involved in several incidents. Pat Harvey, the last driver to put in a time. Colton Lane, not allowed to qualify, will have to start at the back, as you see here, with David Wilson Jr. along with Josh Slade, Chad Brown, James Duke round out your 29 entries here at Michigan. So once again, 2 miles the distance here in Brooklyn, Michigan, at a track that opened in 1968. One of the tracks legendarily designed by Charles Moneypenny, with several different sister tracks, including Texas World Speedway, as well as eventually the now called Auto Club Speedway in California. 18 degrees of banking in the turns, 12 degrees down the start and finish line straight. The backstretch just 5 degrees for today's action. No drivers will start from the pits. Everyone has made it to the grid. Christian, your keys to victory if you want to win here in the Motor City.
It's keeping yourself at the front. Obviously, the closer you can stay, the better, and the less chance that you're going to be in a wreck. And if you really want a shot at it towards the end, you've got to be inside the top 5 with 10 laps to go. And that's really key, because it does take an appreciable amount of time to actually pass the car. It's not quite as easy as it might look. And definitely the place I would want to be is always on the top side. It's a little bit dangerous if the car underneath you kind of pushes up the racetrack, but it just seemed like it was so much easier to pass on the top side in the Coke Series race.
I have to agree, especially more so in 1 and 2. The tricky part was getting the stick, Christian, in 3 and 4, it seemed, at least from personal experience, for driving on my side of things. But, speaking of drivers, who are your favorites to win this type of race?
Well, I think right now, the drivers that I'm keeping an eye on are actually starting towards the back of the field. We've got Pat Harvey, Colton Lane starting at the back, and obviously we've got Bradley Holly. He's got to fight his way through from 13th, and we've also got Richard Regan Jr. in 7th. He's hard to go against, obviously, with such a good record this season, but I feel like this is a chance for a lot of drivers to maybe pick up a win. So I'm going to keep an eye on James O'Brien and Joshua Daniels.
Pace car about to drop off in turn 4. Daniels in control of the field. Green flag waits up at the stand as they go to the Geico start zone for today's action. Green flag is out. We're underway from the Irish Hills of Michigan.
Well, we've already got a car in the grass. I'm not sure who that is. We'll have to check that out. A very
33,
long
Blaine Adams.
That soups on from the pit lane, as that's Blaine Adams already off in the sand. Severe damage to the 33. Ran into the back end of the car in front, and Mike Knight, everyone else, still keeps it clean for now.
Yeah, it was was a very long hold by Joshua Daniels, and right now we see down the backstretch he's trying to defend the bottom line. Doesn't look like anybody's wanting to go to the top right now, but we've got a 3 wide. Abner Acosta is stuck on the top side.
And Regan Jr. showing his card early, wanting to try and get positions. If you have confidence now, Christian, you can make that line work. Last year, not so much. This year, the fix is much more balanced on that line. But Daniels leads the first lap. It's 1, 2, 3 for AthletePoker.com eSports.
Yeah, this is something we saw in the Coca-Cola Series race as well, that the bottom line is quite good, especially at the beginning of a run where everybody isn't quite up to speed. But then it kind of goes away the longer it goes, and obviously we saw there Richard Regan Jr. using it to good effect.
Already several drivers trying to snake down the backstretch. 2 wide, several rows deep. Daniels takes the lead back in 3 and 4 after O'Brien took it in 1 and 2. Here comes Brent Adams now joining the fun.
And this is really the thing. The leader cannot escape this group, so you've just got to kind of roll with it. And if you can maintain on the head of the line, you should. But it's not the be-all and end-all of everything. As long as you're in the group in the top 5 group, there's really no need to push anything more than that.
Right now, the top 10 separate by just 9/10 of a second on the pylon. 11 drivers within 1 second. Still, though, the more they also run side by side, I think you're Christian, the more this still allows everybody else to join the fun compared to, say, if you run single file.
Yeah, exactly. They're punching a big hole in the air right now for everybody behind them, and obviously being side by side, it just slow you down just a little bit on corner exit. So they're really dragging everybody with them right now. You see Charles Sumner is kind of in the middle, sort of between 2 big groups right now in that 6th.
Oh, contact! Regan Jr. up the racetrack. Damage to both sides of the car. And tempers flaring a bit after door-to-door contact between Adams and Regan Jr. He's now dropped all the way outside the top 10. That may hurt the 46 a lot.
And that's definitely not what he would wanted to see so early in the race on lap 4. We saw it. That's the danger of being on the top side. It is very good for passing. As you see, he's giving quite a lot of room in the 23. Well, the Regan Jr. does come down a little bit. I feel like he expected the 23 to be lower right there, but yeah, the 23 was kind of in his second lane, in between the seams.
And for those wondering, why not go to the white line again? That's the discussion of that first seam. Below that first seam, there's just not a lot of grip there, Christian.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually talked to a couple of Coke Series drivers before our race last week, and their opinion on it was very much this: that in the past, everybody kind of had an unwritten rule that the bottom lane was just not usable at this racetrack, and that was going to carry through into that race too, and that if anybody forced you down under there, then it was on the driver that had forced you down if anything bad happened, and that some drivers were not even going to be allowed to be forced down there. They were going to maintain and just force the car above them to go up a lane. So I think it's definitely so low grip that you don't want to be there at all if you can help it, and I think everybody understands that.
Top 3 all single file. Once things have now calmed down, it's Adams in 3rd, O'Brien in 2nd, Daniels in 1st. O'Brien wants to change that. The number 9 machine already with a victory this season, now back up to the lead with the help of Adams with the push. Daniels, though, almost got late arced into turn 1.
Yeah, that's another thing that we see at this racetrack as well, where drivers will try and keep the top car high for as long as possible to just prevent them turning down into the corner. And right there, you saw a good example of that. It didn't result in contact, but it can do. So it's something that everybody has to be aware of and everybody has to really look out for.
By the way, live time and end scoring is available for this race tonight on GSRC.tv to keep up with your favorite teams and drivers throughout the field tonight. Once again, GSRC.tv. And if you look at that, you'll see a blanket of cars. 11 cars within 1 second on the track. And it's now 5 drivers within just a couple tenths of a second. Adams pushes up. Here comes Holly to make it 3 wide.
Yeah, this has allowed a big run. Obviously, Acosta's on the top side. He's in kind of the bad position. Holly thinks better of it, though, and drops back in, and everybody's back to 2 wide.
Should note at the back of the field, Adam Shane just got shuffled all the way to the back of the field. Still green for now, as Sumner has to get off the gas. Checks everyone up at the back of the pack.
Yeah, Durbin really drove deep into three right there and ended up all the way up in the third lane, and that really, really checks you up because you pretty much have to park the middle of the corner at that point. Sumner maybe had an opportunity to sneak under him and make it 3 wide, but chose better of it so early in the race, and that just stacked everybody behind them.
And not only that, Holyfield nearly hit him in the door as well. By the way, you may notice that 17 machine for riding shotgun, it's a plus 13 on the race in not even 10 laps. Make it plus 14 as now he's joined the bottom line.
Yeah, it's a good crossover move right there to get down to the bottom. The bottom looks like it's just working a little bit better right now. Joshua Daniels has got a big stack up happening behind him with 3 cars all really tight to each other's bumpers.
Dennis Cervantes trying to give him a shove, by the way, into the corner, but now it's 2 by 2, 5 rows deep at the front of the field. Remember, they still have to think about a pit stop too eventually in this race, but coming to the end of lap 10, this time by 55 laps to go. Daniels and O'Brien still in control at the head of the pack, while the second row of that grouping, Acosta and Adams, row 3 at the moment. Holly and Knight, row 4, is now Durbin and Cervantes for several of these cars, Christian. This is a chance for some of their best finishes of the season if they can stick and keep this track position.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is where it's a little bit like a Daytona or a Talladega in that regard. Obviously, the draft effect, as we see everybody's still too wide, is obviously very, very potent at this racetrack. But tire management does come into it more so than those tracks, especially when we get to about lap 15 to 20. I think we're going to start to see some drivers start to struggle and others start to come forwards.
Yeah, that was the mark we were discussing a little bit before tonight's broadcast. That is usually the money spot. It was discussed by a couple drivers as well I spoke to, such as Jimmy Moss once again, where he mentioned in the open setup, they were wide open for about the first few laps of the race, as you also mentioned. But with the fixed setup, they ended up having to get fully off the throttle just about in the corner once the tires weared in.
Yeah, and that's where we're going to start to see some real field separation, when everybody starts to get to that point. I'm going to call it now, and I feel like you'll think that I've been a little bit harsh about it, but I think that Stephen Durbin is going to be the one that really shows us when that point is, because he's driving so much deeper into the corners than everybody else, and he's consistently pushing up to that third lane.
You see from the back end, though, Daniels was able to get about a couple car length cushion. You think, oh, that's a good thing. Then you get to the straightaway right here, and the 2x2 drafting is not even drafting off of him and just reeled him right back on in. So it's not just as simple again as, oh, you're quick in the corners? You can't just again break away. In fact, this might hurt Daniels as he had to back up the gas, pushing a little bit up the track again.
Yeah, exactly. You saw right there, he really drove deep into the corner trying to get away, but you just can't do it. And obviously then he had to check up more on exit, and they're right back on the bumpers.
Adams now trying to hold on to the very edge of the first scene. Move the 23 to second spot now. Nice solid move there from Adams, but will O'Brien work with him after what happened to his teammate? Gives him the shove this time.
You see Daniel Knight actually just drop down to the bottom there, taking command of that bottom line. After starting 20th, he's all the way up to what is effectively second spot right now if he can hold on to this coming up too.
And yes, he does. Adams pushed up the racetrack trying to avoid his quarter panel. So Brett Adams, just a few months into his sim racing career, all his brothers on his team, now right behind the 17 you're on board with. So Knight up plus 18 after struggling in qualifying. Here he goes for the race lead. Right underneath Daniels. Can he carry enough momentum down the straightaway to make the pass? Yes, he leads that lap.
And Knight looking extremely strong right now, but as we've seen with Joshua Daniels, once you get to the head of the line, there's nothing going on. You can't get away. He's not going to pull the field, so it'll be interesting to see how he tries to manage this, if he can retain the lead here.
And to get to the point as well, too, of why did he cut straight to the bottom? Part of the discussion, especially brought up, especially in real-life broadcasts at our club, was if you get the run, you have two options. Push the driver in front, or just take the run. In that case, Knight took the run, and it's allowed him now to lead this race.
Yeah, and I think that was a smart decision. At the time, everybody was kind of stacked up a little bit on the top side, and the bottom was completely open. There was nobody there, so he just ducked down there, and he took command of that line and command of the race.
Big shot from the back end of the corner entry, by the way. Holyfield hit the back end of Cervantes. Cars are okay as Knight's not okay. He's in the wall. Danny Cervantes is now in the race lead.
And all his hard work is going to be undone right there. He only tagged it just a little bit, so I think he's going to be okay as we see some contact there into 3. The 23's up in the outside wall. He's coming down.
That was Brad Adams getting doored by Holyfield as he was 3 wide. I don't think they realized they were 3 wide. At least Adams is now 4 wide as his car is slowing down. It's still 4 wide in the heart of the pack.
That could have been really, really bad right there because the 23 was coming down the racetrack as the 17 was trying to sneak under him, and they did make a slight bit of contact right near the exit of the turn, but the 17 held onto it, and everybody lives to fight another day.
Top 2 are now pulled away though by at least half a second. Brian working with Holly to try and change that now. Holyfield is now lined up. He's a +7 in this race. Johnson a +12 is also in the draft. Here's a look from the back end of the number 9 machine with 48 to go. By the way, he called Durbin pushing a lot and trying to gain a lot of time in the short run. He's already fallen back to 10th in the past couple laps alone.
Yeah, and he just looked like the driver who was kind of pushing the hardest, so I thought he'd be the best barometer for us to see if anybody was going to start falling off. And it does look like he's struggling a little bit right now, but he's obviously still hanging on to the top 10.
Battle for the race lead again is side by side. This is going to catch everyone back up again. Daniels hard on the entry. Cervantes backs it up for the exit. Here comes O'Brien and Hawley now to make it a 4-car fight once again. With 47 laps to go. Just thought about going 3 wide as there's a bad bump. O'Brien able to hold on to it with a wiggle.
Yeah, they were lucky there that they weren't kind of all stacked up and that Holly could really get out of that, because if he'd had a car right on his bumper, that could have gone bad very, very quickly, as we see. The lead pair still side by side, and it's really checked both of them up right there. Cervantes on the bottom, and he's going to get trained on the top side here.
There's that momentum, and there's the cut. Teammates getting blocked by one another. O'Brien does have damage on the back end from that hard hit. Holly, though's now trying to draft up on the top. Cervantes has damage on the back end. Acosta's got one of the cleanest cars in the top 5 now from all this craziness. By the way, did we mention his top 20?
Yeah, it's been extremely wild, but somehow everybody, despite we've got obviously some damaged cars out there already, but we've not had a caution yet, and I've probably just cursed the race right there.
Well, several people have done that today. It's not going to be a big jinx. It didn't happen for an earlier broadcast I was a part of, but you have to think about too here, Christian. It's down to the drivers on what type of race they want to dictate. They've dictated they want a crazy one.
Colton Lanes just ended up in the wall right there. He was really tight to the right rear quarter panel of Christopher Williams, and it just looked like Williams was still just pushing up the racetrack, and Colton Lane was I think he was trying to tell him that he was there, but there was no opportunity for him to really get out of that, and hard hit with the wall.
Should note, by the way, that blue car you see on the inside does have an in-sim spotter from a real-world person. Used every bit of real estate and just right there, fed him the quarter panel, up into the wall goes Lane.
Yeah, I don't think that was an intentional kind of take of that line. I think the 09 was just so tight on corner entry, he just ended up pushing up the racetrack, and unfortunately for Colton Lane, he was there, and he's got heavy right side damage now.
Up in the front, by the way. He's now over the back bumper of Joshua Daniels. Just a little tap into the entry. Not electing to send it quite yet as they fight side by side for P3 right behind him. Here's the look from, again, Daniels. And Daniels, his strength so far in this race, Christian, has been corner entry. A lot of the other competitors, though, have been able to back up the corner and then try and pull in speed on corner exit today.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Daniels has looked one of the more measured drivers out of the ones that we've seen cycling through the top 5 so far in this race, and I think that's really working out for him. Obviously, he is the leader. He has led a lot of laps already tonight, but he hasn't looked as near as aggressive when it comes to taking the lead as some of the other drivers, and consequently, he hasn't. When the move hasn't come off, he hasn't fallen way back. He's kind of always only just lost 1 or 2 positions. And I think that style is really working out for him right now. As you see, Holly's got a run on him. I think Daniels is just going to run the top side through 3 and 4, and if he loses the lead, it's no big deal to him. He'll maybe have a run to get it back in the lap or two's time.
Now let's talk a little bit of strategy. We're definitely inside the fuel window, by the way, if anything was to happen or drivers have to pit under green. But here's the interesting part here, Christian. You're still a pit from halfway, but when, if you're a driver, do you decide to pit at this point? Because we're now at that mark where the undercut may be possible in about 4 or 5 laps.
Yeah, definitely, and obviously it will go against you towards the end of the race unless a caution comes out, as we see very tight off 2 right there. Almost at 3 wide with a 9 car on the bottom. James O'Brien being very aggressive here. He's going to try and run. He's actually forced his way up to use that very bottom lane. Just slots in ahead of Cervantes.
That's just right over the Hans device of Johnson, by the way. Give credit to Johnson. He's driven 13 positions up to the front of the field. They're back 3 wide in front of him, though. Cervantes, though, backs off. There it is, you see. From now 4th to 18th. After the pass now at Cervantes, it's now 3 wide behind him.
Christian, Soup here in pit lane. Can you pit from the lead and not lose a lap, or are you going to lose a lap no matter what?
It's very close. It's very, very close. I believe that you will lose a lap, or you will at least come out in amongst the pack. So it's... I think the best advantage you actually have as the leader is that if you make the decision to pit, then you're probably going to bring at least 5 or 6 cars with you right now, especially with it being a big draft pack. One thing at this racetrack that you don't want to do, similar to an auto club, you don't want to pit on your own. You want to pit as a group because it will get you up to speed faster, and it will be advantageous in the long run.
Great question, Soup, as well. By the way, what's going on with the 2 drivers that were involved in incidents before, Adams and Lane, who are 28th and 29th?
They're back there just putting in their time. You know, both of the Adams boys were involved in the incident, one up front and one in back early. You know, I'm new to the series. I got to be a fan of Adams Family Racing. That I know that Morticia can really, she's a good wheelman.
Absolutely, I believe. By the way, Lane is now a lap down. You see him on the apron right there. That damage, Christian, is just an absolute parachute.
Yeah, I mean, he got in the wall really hard, so he's probably got at least a minute, maybe 2 minutes of optional damage there. So he's done. He's got no hope of really getting anything out of this race at this point, unless there's a big wreck that takes out a bunch of cars, and he can get a couple of points that way.
Here's the comparison, by the way, for the drivers with times in terms of damage. 47 seconds a lap for Lane with his damage. Adams, though, despite being involved in the early incident that sent him to the grass and being 24 seconds back, he's running even times to the backpack at the moment, about 23rd on back, but the leaders are still gaining half a second a lap. Look who's joined the fun, though, Robert Bisson Jr. This is his music for SGE eSports to try and join the fray.
Right now we see he's going to the bottom line, and again we see Daniels takes the top, doesn't make an effort to block it off, and he's just going to run the top. And if Bisson Jr. can clear him on the bottom, then fair enough, and if not, then I'm sure Daniels will be back again on the top and leading another lap.
So Bisson Jr. now gets himself a bonus point for a lead lap. Acosta now wants to get one. He now tries to go to the inside for the revolving door. That is the race lead today. Just can't get to the quarter panel, and actually went below the first seam and made it work without getting any looseness. Might be able to try and do something here going forward.
I think we're actually going to start to see drivers trying to single file out here, just because of the pit stop window is coming up. Obviously, if they were going to cut this race in half, they'd be looking to pit around about laps 32 to 33. So drivers on the top line, they really have no choice but to either run a lap longer than cars that are underneath them, or they can try and force their way in and get into a single file situation like you kind of see at Daytona.
Costa trying to take the race lead on the bottom side. Not able to make it stick again in the first seam. But yeah, this could get tricky. Especially with some of the communication. It's also not just as simple as, oh hey, I can pit on my own here. Depending on how you can run this racetrack, you need to have at least a couple cars with you, as noted on Friday during the NAS broadcast on SimSpeed, the iRacing eSports Network, Christian. You need at least 3 or 4 to match the pace of the big pack.
Christian, do you really need a partner, or aren't the tires just alone going to make you faster? Can't you run them down on your own?
Well, the problem is that the tires will allow you to run the track at full throttle, but without the draft effect, you're losing out a significant amount of straightaway speed. So it kind of just evens out, and then you've kind of used the tires up, but you've gained nothing. You've gained nothing from doing so. The other thing is, though, that if you do pit on your own, say if you're at the tail end of this back of the top 10 and you're able to get a very clean pit entry and exit, there is the possibility that then if the pack pits the next lap, or maybe even 2 laps later, you will cycle yourself up into contention, because when the pack pits as a pack, it's really hard for everybody to organize themselves on pit entry and pit exit, and there's actually a substantial amount of time lost because you're having to slow down earlier than you do as a solo car.
2 notes. Charles Sumner is now making his way towards Soup. 2, Chad Brown is also making his way towards Soup, but with a blown engine.
Yeah, but none of the front runners are coming in yet, and that was when Christian was talking about that. If I'm a guy stuck in the back having trouble getting track position, I'm not sure why I'm staying out there. Let's come in and shake it up. Here we go. Here we go.
And Hawley leads the charge for the leaders. Cervantes nearly spins it out. Knight and Johnson also duck down, off and away into the pit lane. Once again, remember, Sumner went for the undercut on these cars. Still many cars in contact. Johnson into the pit wall. Cervantes ran over him.
Yeah, Johnson was out in front trying to get in. Cervantes had nowhere to go. Johnson ends up on the inside wall. Hawley, who has made a great run. Fa la 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 la, baby. He's climbed up all the way through that 184 really fast.
Let's take a look at the replay here, and you can see Cervantes is trying to already get to the top, and boom.
Yeah, and it looked right there like the 14 didn't quite know where his pit box was until it was too late and tried to make a really late cut across, and Cervantes wasn't expecting it. See, normally we see drivers kind of really drift down towards their pit box in a really slow manner, and there obviously just cut straight down towards it.
And as you can see, these drivers are your race leaders on screen at the moment, just passing Hawley and company on the racetrack. The pit delta, if you are good in the pit box, is 39 seconds. Here at this racetrack today, that's about a full lap in terms of pace as you look on board with Hawley. He is the first driver in front who has come down to pit so far. Regan Jr., Williams, and Zemke have also just finished service, while McDaniels and O'Brien.
Perfectly. He had a really great pit entry. He's going to try and get under Bissau Jr. here, get his lap back. And there we see Joshua Daniels exiting. He's gonna have lost about maybe 2.5 seconds here to Hawley.
Give or take, yes. Absolutely, that could be huge. Harvey and Durbin have also come in this past time by. And Bissau Jr. is now ducking in this time by. Big checkup for Acosta and company, though, trying to not run him over. No pit call over the radio for the 3.
And this is where it becomes really, really difficult. You've got cars on obviously differing strategies, and the closing rate is massive, especially when a car's coming into pit road.
Should note there was door-to-door contact, a bit argy-bargy between Slade and the car behind the 96 machine. That was Smith. Those cars are without damage, though, despite nearly wrecking several times on their pit entry. So 4 more cars down this time. Soup.
Top 6 have yet to pit. Hawley's leading everybody who has come in, and boy, he's got a nice lead on Knight now, almost a second.
Knight, remember, has gained a lot of time after his trouble with the wall. Here's the cars coming off the pit lane, though. Some of the freshest tires in the field, while Acosta is ducked down in the lane, but Holyfield's curling the lead. Wilson Jr., Schilling, Kalen, Lane Adams are yet to pit. Your net leader is still Bradley Hawley by that gap as mentioned as we take a look. And an error mistake there, Christian. Several drivers have been locking up their tires in the boxes already tonight.
Yeah, it's a deceptively difficult pit road because the pit road speed is actually quite high. And obviously the speeds on track are high, so the tires are extremely hot, which means that the stopping into the pit box is quite a bit more challenging than usual. And yes, we've seen a couple of drivers have trouble with that tonight already. And it's obviously a loss under a yellow. It's a big loss under a green to do that. And if you get lucky, you just have to bump the car backwards a little bit. If if you get really unlucky, you have to do the whole wheel around the pit box, and you lose a substantial amount of time, upwards of 4 to 5 seconds.
Speaking of timings right now, Ron Holyfield is currently in the overall lead, but by 7 seconds over Wilson Jr. Kalen also to pit, Schilling and Blaine Adams also are yet to pit. He's got a 31-second cushion, and here's the number to think about. These drivers can make it up to about 48 to 50 laps on the field, depending on if they save here, Christian. This is a gamble that could try and get the track position for the last stages of this race.
Yeah, this is a situation where he's going to be to the shorter end of that number just because he's running around on his own, and obviously that's gonna make it more difficult for him to eke out to that lap 50. The other thing is he's potentially going to start getting passed by these drivers who pit before he even gets to that number, depending on what his drop-off is like. And obviously right now he's already got everybody back on the lead lap with him. So the big advantage of trapping cars a lap down is gone. But obviously if a yellow comes out, it's probably still going to be a big track position gain, as we'll expect everybody else to come back down again.
Especially with the fact that most of them are already turned 5, 6, 7 laps for the most part. Schilling just ducked down this time by, though. He's now averted out of the call. Blaine Adams has also been passed by the drivers on fresher tires. So make it just now 3 drivers with a chance to try and stretch it for the track position.
And the gap's coming down very, very quickly. Bradley Holly is now just over 28 seconds behind Ron Holyfield, so he's probably not going to get him before Holyfield has to pit himself. But the loss for Holyfield, if he does have to make a green flag pit stop, is going to be massive. He's going to be well towards the tail end of the field.
And indeed, Joshua Daniels was able to sneak around Holly now. So Daniels back out in front of all the cars who finished racing in 4th in the 77.
Was just about to mention that, Soup, actually. Thank you, because Daniels, he was able to drive right on by, but almost looked like he was trying to floor it, Christian, to get to the net race lead rather than save the tires. Wanting to get that position first, then stay in front of Holly, and then see what happens almost.
Yeah, obviously he had quite a big gap to run down, and he's really pushed to do that. As we see on the exit of 2 there, you can tell he's really up on the wheel of that car now. Holly doesn't look like he's content to let that lead go though, so he's gonna be trying again. Although he slots in behind as they get into turn 3, and the advantage here is with Daniels at this point because his tires are at least 1 lap fresher. But with how hard he's driving the car, it's possible that advantage is going to flip back around because Holly doesn't really look like he's pushing at all.
Yeah, if anything, he's just pushing him if he gets the run down the corner into the corner, just taking the run to the back bumper almost. By the way, I want to bring up one thing too. We've talked about some drivers going for the overcut. Acosta, he was in the lead pack, remember, before everything started to sort out. He's now all the way deep in the 2nd pack. In 13th position, now up to 12th spot. He's got the freshest tires right now out of any of the lead cars, but he is currently about 3 seconds back of the race leaders for the net lead, rather.
And these guys I'm sorry, man. Sorry. The guys who ran long, if there's a yellow now, could they stay out and get track to get up front with 20 laps to go, or does everybody have to come in for tires if we get a yellow?
I think the smart move is for everybody to come down for tires. The tire fall off is at its biggest in the first 15 or so laps. So I think at this point of the run, everybody's ran on them long enough to get them hot. And that's the interesting thing with these tires now. It used to be that everybody was kind of concerned with regards to wear. That's not a thing now. It seems like it's shifted heavily towards temperature. Everybody's just concerned about how hot they get. And with this many laps on them already, everybody's already going to be at or near their peak kind of temperatures on the tires. So the advantage of the new tires is gone completely. The only way to get it back is to come around and get a fresh start.
Speaking of heat, the race lead net is currently heating up. O'Brien passed by Holly for 2nd, tried to take the run past Daniels for 1st, and now Holly's going to help him complete said move. To the inside for the net race lead. The teammates fight side by side for AthleteBooker.com eSports, and the Bobby Dale Arts Legacy eSports driver outside of the series leads at the stripe for the net lead. But Still, those 3 cars are still on track. That's about to become 2. Kalen just indicated over the radio he is pitting at the end of the speedway this time by.
Another one that's going to drop out at 45 laps in. He must be close on fuel at this point. He's probably only got at most another lap or 2, especially if he's been running on his own. And speaking of this lead battle, it's about to be joined by Abner Acosta. He's actually ran that gap down. He's almost to the back of Daniel Knight right now.
Not only that, Pat Harvey is now in the fight too, Christian, after starting from the very back of the field in 24th.
Yeah, Pat Harvey is a driver that you've always got to keep an eye on, especially when there's an extreme long run in a race. He's extremely good at measuring his pace, and maybe not so much this week with it being a little bit of a plate track, but he's very, very good when it comes to tires, very good when it comes to race strategy, and I'm not at all surprised to see that he's played himself into this fight.
See on board as it's 3 wide for the race lead. Holyfield has pit this time. Wilson Jr. ducked in as well. Holly nearly gets turned by Knight. Holds on to it. Everyone bunches back up. Holly still drifting as he saves it.
I don't think that Knight was expecting Holly to check up as much as he did right in the middle of the corner, and that's going to be a huge disadvantage to Holly now, having that huge slide on his tires, and this might be an opportunity for the top 3 to actually break away.
And not only that, new race leader Acosta on the freshest tires in the lead pack. He's now leading over Joshua Daniels with 18 to go this time by. As everyone was bunching up, he just took advantage, floored right on by, and then dived right underneath the first seam to complete the pass in turn 1.
Yeah, and Acosta looks like he's really played the strategy right. I was a little bit skeptical that the overcut would work, especially with how long he ran. But right now, he's got the most pace out of this top 3 by a mile. He might even be able to actually break away from the pair behind him.
But here's the thing, is there an equalization point with these tires in the fixed cars, you think?
Yes, I think so, and I think that's where he probably does actually have to try and press his advantage now, where it's as big as it is. And even at worst, if it just pulls the other 2 along with him and makes it a 3-car fight, I think that's still better than having this other group behind in the group with him. Because right now, Knight is really kind of holding up that line. He's fighting with Holly. Pat Harvey's behind, and the top 3 are just eking away.
Christian, I think having Acosta out front is probably the best thing that could have happened to O'Brien and Daniels right now, is maybe he can pull them along. I think when these tires all level out, I think Daniel Knight might be the car to beat if he can get back up there.
Yeah, I agree with that, and that's where it's really going to come in, but Knight's just really pushed coming off of 2, and Holly's going to get clear of him now. We saw Junior actually getting back in this fight. He's got a huge run on Knight.
So he's been able to recover from a bit of mistakes in pit road, as near contact as Knight nearly came down to the right rear quarter panel. But here's that downside, remember, from Knight hitting the wall. He's got back-end damage and still a little bit of right-side damage with, because there's been no cautions, he hasn't been able to repair said damage, and now he's dropping like a lead balloon.
Yeah, that's the big disadvantage of having any kind of damage at a track like Michigan. That it just hurts you everywhere. It hurts you in terms of corner speed. It hurts you in terms of straightaway speed. It's one of those things where if you pick it up early in the race, it's the most boring race you'll then have for the entirety rest of your life, because you just can't do anything when you have damage at this racetrack.
We saw Junior currently leading just behind Holly for that second stanchion. They are now within the draft, though, with the top 3 with 15 laps to go, and this is about to get interesting. Everyone about to bunch back up. The top 10 separate by 2.1 seconds, but the top 5 are now just separated by 1.34 seconds off the exit of turn 2 and closing.
Yeah, you see Holly's really reconnecting that pack right now. And I do think it's going to start to stack back up as we get towards the end of the race, like you say. Right now, though, everybody's actually gone single file in the top 10 for pretty much the first time in the race.
Checking, by the way, with the drivers, just a note, Wilson Jr., who tried to stretch, is 23rd. Holyfield, he's at the tail of the lead lap in front of James Duke in 25th. Derek Schoen, who tried to stretch, is in 21st. Mark Kalin in 23rd. That's how far back and how much time they've lost, even though they're faster by 0.2. The cars in front are running 40.1s to 39.9s in the second group. The top three once again is bunched up again as O'Brien has gotten the push from Daniels. Holly's now joined it to turn into a 4-car fight.
Yeah, this is where having Acosta on the front did allow that group of three to kind of push clear for a little bit, but now everybody's backed up, and Acosta's actually going to get passed by James O'Brien here.
Here comes the teamwork. The AthleteBooker.com eSports machine. Tandem together, O'Brien now to the lead, coming to 12 to go next time by. Acosta cycled right back to P3, but that swap means Holly is right on the back bumper, and Bisson Jr. is now about to be pulled into the draft.
Yeah, it's such a huge push right there from Joshua Daniels to actually get both those cars clear on the bottom line. Now Acosta trying on his own here, actually straddling the seam, going all the way down to the very bottom groove. He's only just clear of the 77, but Holly now has a big run on the bottom as Acosta checks up that top line.
It's been talked about a lot. Momentum is key for these types of races. That time it looked like Holly just took advantage of the lack of momentum now from the 77 and just carried his back to the inside for second now.
Now all the way to the bottom, he's going to be slow on the exit of 2. Daniels is going to have a big run on the top, pushing Acosta. And it's just playing everybody behind back into this fight. We see Bissell Jr. now to the back of Holly, Pat Harvey behind him, and then Daniel Knight is still hanging on even with that damage.
O'Brien watching the back mirror as Daniels trying to take back second. Does. Acosta nearly slaps the wall, drifting up the racetrack, but Bisson Jr. is now in the draft within a couple car lengths. Harvey, Knight, and don't forget about Charles Sumner and some names we haven't mentioned too much. Adam Zemke, who's in 9th, Josh Slade in 10th, and Steven Durbin has still been able to hold on inside the top 11.
Some drivers out here having a great night in terms of points for themselves. Obviously, Steven Durbin up there just outside of the top 10 right now, about 3 tenths behind Josh Slade, who's actually up 17 spots from 27th.
The closer we get to the yellow flag, Christian, the harder it is for these guys to the checker flag, for these guys to pull the trigger if the yellow comes out now.
Yeah, exactly. And right now, this is all really a game of positioning. Obviously, James O'Brien's got 3 tenths on the field. That's going to be hoovered up immediately with this draft pack behind him. But this is all about being in that top 5 to have a chance at the end of the race as we get down to 10 to go.
Coming to 9 to go this time by. O'Brien now up by nearly half a second, though, because more side-by-side. Much of the field single-filed right behind him. Acosta trains up with Daniels, Holly, Bisson Jr., Harvey, Knight, Sumner, Zemke, Slade, and Durbin all trying to reel them down in these final few miles of this race. At this point, if they fight here, Christian, that may be the dream. The problem is, Acosta's actually ran away from Daniels. He nailed the corner so well in 3 and 4.
Yeah, and Acosta actually needs help from Daniels right now to get pushed up to O'Brien, so it's a little bit difficult because you can't really afford to let the leader get out there at this point in the race. The leader's actually getting a little bit of draft assistance from a lap car here. That's helping O'Brien.
Trying to communicate where that lap car is. Actually held it up just a touch because they weren't sure who was supposed to go up high. And James Duke nearly slapped the wall. He's got significant damage and nearly crashes in the field. Harvey able to save it. That was close.
Yeah, that was extremely close. It was close for Bissell Jr. when he was passing, and then it was really close for Pat Harvey when he was having to pass.
So after that heart attack, under 8 laps to go, and now everyone's back again to the rear end of O'Brien. Now the bigger question here too, and part of this, Christian, remember that back end damage? Are you concerned if you're O'Brien about that rear end damage along the back end of your spoiler and bumper?
It's difficult because sometimes it doesn't seem to matter, and other times it can be a massive parachute feed. I think the biggest game for him though is that the nose is clean, and that's really where the damage will hurt you the most. And it's strange when you have nose damage on the car, if you can see it inside the car, like if you see the hood popped up, even if it might not actually be slowing you down that much, mentally it slows you down because it makes you're looking at it and you're going, oh no, I've got damage. And that's actually can be a bigger factor than the damage itself. So I think the fact that the nose is clean, the fact that he probably doesn't even know that the rear panel of the car is damaged, means that he's running pretty much at full speed and not really suffering any effects from it. He's
getting a little bit of effects from drivers 2 by 2 behind him, though. Back within 3/10 again. Daniels trying to get clear of Acosta. Holly with the shove on the 77. Daniels now clear for second as they're now back within 2/10. Bisson Jr. can't take advantage. Thought about 3, checked up twice in the 3.
Yeah, Bisson Jr. really thought about that. Right on the entry, you saw him kind of look for if the lane was open, and then when the lane was maybe 50% there, he still thought about trying it again. And this is a driver that actually could really kind of throw the spoiler into this fight right here, because he's in this top 5. He has a shot at this.
And that would be huge for him and his team. What would be the first victory for them all in 2020 as a grouping? 5 to go. High 5 from the flag stand. That time by 5 cars in good position to try and win it, with a 6 trying to join the fray again in Pat Harvey.
Just about hanging on to this line right now. Bisson Jr. just a little bit of contact with Holly right there. Didn't really hit either of them. Acosta now at the tail end of this line is really fallen out of the best seat in the house, and it's going to be difficult, obviously, as the laps count down. Holly trying to make his move right now. Joshua Daniels is going to run that top side. Daniels looks like he's really got a preference for running that top. So if anybody can force him off it and make Daniels run the bottom, I think that might actually be an easier way to pass him than keep trying to pass on the bottom here.
And Daniels looks like to try to pull off the draft of O'Brien as he's going back and forth in the corners. Goes back to the bottom this time, though. Daniels with a bit of a squeeze on Holly. Bisson Jr. takes it 3 wide down the back straightaway. He tries to take away P3, back 2 wide as Holly gives him the space.
And I think he might regret that. I think it would have worked out better for him actually to push Joshua Daniels, both of them past Holly on the top side. Right now, he's kind of stuck side by side with Holly, and Acosta going all the way to the apron now to put him 3 wide to make that pass on the bottom of the wall.
Level Motorsports' driver on the road course is one of its talented competitors now trying to take back P3 for a podium. Still sticking it right underneath the seam, has to back off as Bisson Jr. doesn't back down. Coming to 2 to go this time by Daniel, still trying to build up a run. Still side by side for 3rd position though as Holly now gets the draft.
Yeah, this is tricky really for both Holly and Bisson Jr. because being in that 3rd spot as you come to that last lap, that might be the position that you need to be in to just have a run at actually winning this race. So neither of them wants to give it up, but by fighting, they're both playing themselves out of the fight, because being side by side, they're not making forward progress. It's really going to rely on Joshua Daniels to try and make a move, and he does right now. James O'Brien on the top side, Daniels on the bottom.
Side by side, under 2 laps to go, coming to a lap and a half to go down the back, 2 by 2 for 1st and 3rd positions. O'Brien though quicker on the top. Holly with a big run from the top as well. Daniels trying to send it hard. O'Brien tries to squeeze his teammate. Side by side, door to door, race is official at the stripe if we get the white flag. Daniels gets the better run off the corner. Acosta now tries to send it to make it 3 rows deep double file. White flag, 1 lap to go from MIS.
Yeah, this is completely open right now. The front pair being side by side has really checked it up. Looks like Daniels on the bottom is going to get tight. This is going to give an opportunity for Holly. Bisson Jr. is going to have nowhere to go when he comes off the corner. He's going to try and force it free. I know he'll try it. He does a little bit. He's not quite got the overlap he needs, though.
And now, 2 car tandems. O'Brien cuts to the bottom. Holly with nobody to work with. Daniels tries to get 1 last draft. Coming towards the checker flag. James O'Brien pulls away off turn 4. For the 2nd time in 2020 Season 3, James O'Brien wins in the PRL Cup Series, this time at Michigan.
He really timed that perfectly right there. I think Joshua Daniels is going to be a little bit disappointed that he lost the opportunity at that, but he did have to go for it and nearly paid off. Still comes home 3rd.
Absolutely perfectly played, it seems, tonight. To time up the moves, and a bit of respect shown between him and Holly there with the bit of the bump, and Bisson Jr. mistimes the respectful bump by wrecking the race winner. I guess that's a time now. I guess you can take the burnouts instead after that.
Yeah, I was just giving him a suggestion to do the burnouts on the backstretch.
And nearly getting hit by Paul Johnson, as James O'Brien gets to burn it down for the other side of the speedway from the fans. take a step aside. Post-race coverage coming up in just a few moments. Stay tuned. You're watching the Global SimRacing Channel live from the virtual Michigan International Speedway in Brooklyn, Michigan. Welcome back, everyone, to the virtual Michigan International Speedway for post-race coverage of the Precision Racing League Cup Series, sponsored by Web Hearing Centers, Road Trip Transport, and by the ButtKicker. Justin Prince alongside Christian Challenger, Sean Ambrose in the director's seat, Sue also in the pits for this evening's action. Let's take a look at your unofficial race results after James O'Brien won what was a race from green flag to checker flag with not a single moment to breathe, it seemed, here at MIS. Bradley Hawley came home in second. He'll be having a holly jolly time for the Jelly Rolls machine, with Joshua Daniels rounding out the top three. We'll speak with those drivers in just a few moments. Robert Bisson Jr. comes home in fourth. Acosta with an important top five for the point standings tally, with Pat Harvey in sixth. Charles Sumner with a strong run in seventh. Adam Zemke quietly came home in eighth. Josh Slade in his first race in a few weeks came home in ninth. And Daniel Knight, despite having a lot of damage on this race car, Christian, rounded out the top 10 with a plus 10.
And another driver that we saw hanging around the top 10 for the majority of the night just misses out on it. Stephen Durbin comes home in 11th. Jeffrey Smith, driver we didn't talk about much at all, had a good run. Started 23rd, finished 12th. Mike Knight came home in 13th. And then Richard Regan Jr., we saw him have damage earlier, and that really kind of ended his night from there. He just hung around in the mid-pack for the rest of it. Comes home in 14th. Danny Cervantes, another contender at the front of the field, started 4th. Had a little bit of an incident on pit road, comes home 15th. Jose Medina started 9th, came home 16th. Christopher Williams had that contact with Colton Lane and comes home in 17th, with Adam Shane 18th, Paul D. Johnson in 19th, and Brett Adams, unfortunately, started 5th, but comes home in 20th.
Holyfield 21st after trying to stretch the field. Wilson Jr., Kalen, Schilling, Adams round out your lead lap cars. James Duke with severe damage, 26th, 1 lap down. Lane Adams involved with an incident on the start, which sent him to the grass. He finished 2 laps down, no chance to repair his car. Colton Lane sent to the fence, 8 laps down, several laps off the pace, while Chad Brown DNF'd with a blown motor in the third pack. But James O'Brien was able to hold on in what was an intense race from start to finish here at MIS. He joins us here in the broadcast booth. It's your second win of the season. How does it feel to win what was an intense one tonight?
I have no clue how I did that. I really don't. I thought I had no chance. I was cussing. You could ask Richard. I was cussing on the radio. I was having no fun in that pack. It was so intense. I couldn't think. It was just so stressful, and I was just happy to be around after that pit stop in that position with Joshua, my teammate, and Abner near the end. And I was getting impatient because everybody was catching us, and I was like, here we go again. It's just going to be the same thing as it was at the beginning. Oh man, it was just unreal racing. I am so proud of everybody in the league today. No cautions. I know Richard got doored early on. It was unfortunate, and there was a few other incidents, and I'm kind of glad there was no yellow because I was happy without dealing with restarts and all that. But holy crap, I am like burnt out. That was probably the hardest race I've ever done.
How difficult was it, on top of things, to make sure you were paying attention to the runs behind and trying to defend said runs, because your teammate in Daniels tried to pass you a couple times, you had Holly trying to charge, you had B-Saw trying to take a 3 wide, and you had Acosta trying to take a 3 wide at times?
It was definitely most of the last 10 laps, or however many laps. I was probably looking at my mirror more than out the windshield, and I kind of had to gauge everybody for who they were on how aggressive of a driver they are. Joshua did not want to be denied today. He was driving like a man on a mission the entire time. I felt kind of bad that I kind of stole it from him. He really deserved this win today. He really was driving like his heart out, and like Abner is a very man on a mission style. I don't want to call him aggressive because he's very precise and very clean. And Brad, we know how good Brad is, so I didn't kind of had to worry about him. It was just, yeah, it was just a whole nother layer of challenge.
Here's another layer to think about too for the Daytona Road Course. Since you had a DNS at Darlington, you'd technically already have a drop factored in. Once you add all the drop weeks for the cars in front, you're currently unofficially P2 with drops entering the final race, with a chance to battle your teammate Richard Reagan Jr. for the championship. How much pressure is there to try and put on a good performance at a brand new racetrack for the Cup cars?
I think it's going to be a pretty big, great unknown for everybody. For that, it's going to take a pretty tall task because Richard's pretty good at road courses. I'm pretty good at them too. We usually do endurance racing together on the road side, and for that, it would probably take another day like today where he would get taken out by a mistake or a slip up or a racing incident. So I don't hope that it happens because we're both running real consistent this whole season. But it would definitely be a surprise if I could sneak in there and steal it.
Who do you want to thank for your second victory of the season tonight?
You guys for broadcasting, especially you, Justin. You're awesome dude, and Christian. Neonism Paints, Richard and his friend Jesse, they make some awesome paints for my car and his car and anybody else's. Millionautos, the company that sponsored the race tonight, my website for car parts and anything else you want, and it's a partner to Moto Million, who is an established motorcycle car part or motorcycle part sales site. PRL for putting this on as usual. And that's pretty much it. Everybody else who watched. I'm sorry, Athlete Booker. I'm so tired, man. Ty at athletebooker.com. If it wasn't for them, I don't think we'd have this good of a team.
Yeah, it's your team's combined 8th victory in 9 races. Fairly obvious that the team championship just about locked up with this victory tonight as well. Congrats.
Thank you.
Once again, that is your race winner, James O'Brien, coming home with the checkered. Christian Chowder gets to speak with your second place runner in this crazy one, Bradley Hawley.
Bradley, you started back in 13th, but you made pretty quick work of getting yourself up into that top 5 fight, and then at the end, obviously there you had a shot at the race win. Decided to take the top line, and I think I would have done a similar move. Unfortunately, you just didn't have any help there on that last lap, but got to be happy with that P2 run, right?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely happy. I I felt like maybe I didn't get that run on the outside because tires were getting too hot.
It's interesting you mentioned about the tires getting too hot. We did see a couple of drivers make a little bit of a off strategy call, so to speak, and just offset themselves 1 or 2 laps either way. And do you think that kind of played a factor into the end of the race there?
Um, I don't think so. Just with what I noticed in practice and everything, with the tires getting over 300 degrees, you lose grip once it gets over, I think, what, 285 or something like that. Um, it basically equals it out, and I mean, it's all about managing, tire temperature, not tire wear.
Yeah, exactly. And that was actually something that we mentioned when we were discussing if there was going to be a late race yellow and how that might affect drivers' decisions to stay out on track. And really, the conclusion we came to is that everybody had been out there for long enough that they've been running them to the point where they were kind of at their peak temperatures anyway. So everybody would have to come down to get the pace back. And obviously, at the end, it did turn. For a little bit, it looked like it was going to be a single file, and then it went back to a pack race. And just those last kind of couple of laps, getting yourself into position to maybe have a run at it. What were your kind of thoughts at that point? Where were you aiming to be, other than obviously the lead starting that last lap?
I mean, if first was, I mean, I didn't want to be side by side going into the final lap, with the leaders. So, I mean, where I was at third place, I was, pretty confident on what I needed to do, and with, I guess, trying to keep that tire temperature down again too. Just trying to manage 2 or 3 different things at the same time to get yourself in position to win.
Well, it very nearly paid off, and obviously came away with the second place. So a pretty good run there. And next week we're a totally different challenge. Obviously it's Daytona, but not Daytona as we know it. It's the road course. Have you done any laps around there? And kind of what do you think that race is going to be like?
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely done some laps already. I think it's going to be the same as today, where you're you're going to need to manage your tire temperatures more than anything, especially those rear tires on the infield. Um, it it seems like those rear tires just get hot super fast with how much you can spin the tires.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. It's all about rear tire management at that racetrack, and I think the drivers that we see that do the best job of that will be the ones that come out on top. And before we let you go tonight, is there anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to?
I'd like to thank the Waterback guys. We practice week in, week out, trying to figure out everything that we need to do to be up in condition for a win. You guys for broadcasting us week in and week out, and the PRL for hosting these races.
Well, thank you for coming and chatting with us, and once again, congratulations on the P2 finish.
Thank you very much.
Once again, that's Bradley Hawley coming home in P2 tonight. Joshua Daniels came home in P number 3 on the racetrack. He's also joined by his teammate Richard Regan Jr. because, for a couple reasons. Well, 1, strong performance for the team. 2, team championship essentially clinched tonight. I'll ask you first, Joshua, about the run. How are you feeling coming home in P3 tonight?
I couldn't ask for any better, man. It was really hard fought. Everybody was faster than I expected them to be. They were a lot better than I were on the long run, so I probably could tell.
Yeah. Why were you pushing, if you don't mind me asking, harder on the corner entry? Because it seemed a couple of your competitors were backing up the corner, then passing you back on exit while you were trying to carry a lot of momentum into the corners about 5 miles an hour quicker.
Yeah, I'm not sure, man. That was just a line that I had picked up over the week. Not sure how many races I had done, open races, but it was quite a few, and that was just a line that it seemed to work better for me.
Now, Richard, it was a rough race for you. Unfortunately, tonight you had a chance to try and clinch the championship with drops, but had some contact that shuffled you back into the end in P14. How are you feeling on your side of the garage?
Yeah, I felt good coming into the race. Put some good practice in and had some good long run speed. It's just sometimes it's how it goes. Sometimes hard racing, it's not always the way you want it to go. And unfortunately, I couldn't overcome that damage that much because, this track's basically almost flat out. So any little bit of aero damage really hurts you down the straightaway. And I was about like 4 or 5 mile an hour down on the straightaway, so I just had to hang on.
Want to ask you this as well. It's been a dominant campaign for your entire group this season, combined 8 victories, several top 5s and top 10s, and several poles, the most out of anybody, by the way, with 5, including tonight with the pole for Daniels. Richard, it's been a team unit throughout the campaign. Essentially, team championship is AthleteBooker.com eSports. How does that feel for you?
Yeah, it definitely feels good. It should be good because next season I'm pretty sure we're gonna keep with the same driver lineup and everything. So we're gonna try to go for another team championship. I'm not sure what PRL is doing with eligibility for the playoffs yet, so we'll have to see with that and see if James and Joshua are going to be eligible for the playoffs. So hopefully they're eligible, and we can take 3 of the top 4 spots going into that championship race next season.
We'll have a lot of discussions about said postseason. We talked about it a little bit back in the winter time. We'll go more in depth during the final broadcast of the campaign. Swing towards you, Joshua, then. For this season, you, Richard, and James are the favorites now for the title. All 3 of you could come away with said title by the end of the race, depending on how things go at the road course. What's the pressure like for you, first off?
I try as hard as I do any other week. So, next week won't be much different than this week was. I'll just put in a lot of time and just hope I can be fast enough at the end of the week.
Counter with you, Richard, because the closest out of the 3 drivers for AthleteBooker.com eSports is also your teammate for your technical alliance, Bobby Dillon's Legacy Esports, and James O'Brien, and your friend. He talked a little bit about that pressure on his side of things to try and close up the gap. What's the pressure like for you for the final race?
Yeah, I think having the championship lead always benefits someone. So I mean, my approach is going to be like normal. Put in a lot of practice and just go into the race with a clear mind and just take it lap by lap, corner by corner, because that's really all you can do. We had some good pace at Sonoma, and I'm hoping to carry that pace at Daytona.
I'll ask this question to you, Joshua. Who do you want to thank for your team's good run in the team championship and your top 3 tonight?
The 2 guys that decided to work with me were first and second there. So, I'd like to shout out to them guys for running me clean and having a good race. That was one of the best races I ever had.
Who would you like to thank on your end, Richard?
Yeah, I got to thank AthleteBooker.com for coming on board with me, Josh, and James this season. Really awesome sponsorship. I got to thank everyone at GSRC, everyone at the PRL, everyone that tunes in. I got to give a shout out to Neonism. If you need a paint, go to facebook.com/Neonism. Tell them the PRL sent you, and we'll get you hooked up with the paint. We gotta thank ButtKicker, Oculus Glasses, Abruzzi Racewear, everyone at Bobby Dale Earnhardt Legacy Esports, and yeah, like I said, everyone that tunes in.
Congratulations to you guys on the team title. Congratulations, Joshua, on the top 3. Good luck for the final race of the campaign, Richard, which, by the way, is sponsored by Neonism.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Joshua Daniels, along with Richard Regan Jr. for speaking with us, as well as Bradley Hawley and James O'Brien. I'll turn to you, Soup, first. What are your final thoughts on tonight's action, coming in for pit reporting this evening for what turned out to be one of the best races of the year?
Thought it was an impressive race by all the drivers to go the complete distance without a yellow flag. And it wasn't just like they were racing in line. It was a competitive racing all the way around. They crashed a few times, but they didn't bring out the yellow because they've got some good wheelman there. Good job, boys.
Christian, the next race and the final race was originally Watkins Glen, but in coinciding with the iRacing Services decision to have all official races brought to the Daytona Road Course, everyone gets to experience that. Not just the Coke drivers in official racing, everyone. It's the same for PRL. What are the expectations for when these drivers hit that racetrack come Sunday to decide a champion?
I think it's a very difficult challenge. I don't think it's as difficult as, say, the Charlotte Roval is, but that new chicane that they've put in is yeah, it's definitely not the easiest thing to get through. It's very lap time critical to get through there clean. So I think that'll be a big factor, especially when we get to qualifying times. And the other thing is it's really difficult to keep tires on at that track, because the infield is so slow, but then the big oval is so fast, and it's so different. The challenge is completely different to get through the bus stop than it is to get through the infield loops. So it's going to be hard for drivers to adapt to that. It's going to take a lot of practice to be very, very good at it. And I actually think that the majority of passing we're going to see is going to happen in the infield. I think people expect to see it in the bus stop, because that's generally where you see it in GT cars and down into turn 1 as well. That new chicane breaks up that flow running down to turn 1, so that really kind of removes that passing opportunity. And from my experience, you don't really get a big enough run coming onto the oval to make anything happen into the bus stop. But the big area where we're seeing a lot of mistakes and where we're seeing a lot of opportunities to get by is those 2 infield loops, where if somebody makes a mistake, they run wide, you can get underneath them. I think we should definitely expect to see some 2-wide action through the kink, and that's gonna be pretty wild, and it's gonna take some pretty skilled drivers to make that work without there being a big wreck.
In other words, for when you are the first officially sanctioned NASCAR series to hit that track on Tuesday, where do you think you'll finish then?
So this is difficult, because I really don't want to kind of show my hand at this point. I feel like our car is really, really good. I'm gonna actually work on it some more after we wrap up here. But I think overall we're looking at least a top 10. I hope that we're going to be in contention to fight for the top 5. Obviously, the one that everybody's looking out for is Bobby Zelensky. He's obviously the guy everybody wants to beat on road courses. I don't know if we've necessarily got something for him. We might, and even if I personally don't, then hopefully one of my Tech Alliance partners might have a shot at it.
We'll see how you do, and as Christian said, you don't want to show your hand, otherwise everyone will take that hand and use that said hand and put the label that is seen for the memes on Reddit saying, "It's now my hand." With that, it was a good hand for James O'Brien today here at Michigan. We'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's exciting action from Michigan. We'd also like to thank Charles Sumner and the rest of the Precision Racing League for organizing this strong series and what was the race of the season tonight. We'd also like to thank the various sponsors in this series: Web Hearing Centers, Road Trip Transport, and the ButtKicker, as well as tonight's race sponsor in Millionautos. We'd also like to take the time to ask you one more time, are you interested in advertising with GSRC? Our channel's 1 million monthly global impressions are a great way to get your branding seen by a diverse audience. Follow the link in the description to the YouTube version of this broadcast tonight to learn more about the Global SimRacing Channel. We'll take this time to thank the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast now listed up on your screen. Additional thanks go to Jude Lawn, who provides the wonderful music you hear each and every night here in GSRC. See the screen for how to get hold of more of our great music. We'd also like to take the time to thank Christian Sean as well as Bill Soupson for taking the time for tonight's action for what was a great broadcast. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including its upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can check out our merchandise for sale at gsrc.storemvy.com, or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, one word, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to our YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button so you don't miss a moment here on the Global SimRacing Channel. The final race of the campaign is ready for a new challenge. It's the Daytona Road Course, and don't forget about that final chicane in Turn 4. That will be there too. Come Sunday, August the 16th, green flag expected 9 p.m. Eastern. Coverage starts at 8:50 p.m. Eastern Time on the Global SimRacing Channel. We also have many upcoming races for other series listed up on your screen, so be sure to check those out as well and mark them down in your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.